Hi everyone, we are going to paint this beautiful Phaleonopsis orchid. I painted quite a few orchids in my life and these ones are one of my favorites. So another one that I painted a while ago was this one, and quite a lot of detail as well. As you can see, beautiful colors. And then these are the brushes that we will be using for this orchid. Pencils, some of the paints that I used, and the little palette that I used. The paper that I use is Fabriano Artistico hot press watercolor paper, and this is the texture of the paper. Another thing, I do apologize, the fan is on here. It's a bit hot today, but you will notice when I do the color charts, on a lot of them I will have these little squares here. I didn't do on these three yet, but sorry, I have at the bottom of the booklet I explain to you why I want to use transparent or translucent watercolors, and there's a reason why I do that. That is the way I create these flowers of mine, like this and like this and like this. You can see there are loads and loads of layers of watercolor underneath each of these layers, and the only way I can do that is by creating by using transparent or translucent watercolors. Now you don't have to use transparent or translucent watercolors. I just use that because I can build up and build up and build up on my layers. That's how I like to paint. However, you can use opaque watercolors. So if the only way you know how what an opaque watercolor is, if you take a black Koki and you draw a line on your paper and you take your watercolor paint and you paint over it. If you can see the black line very clearly, it means that it's not opaque watercolors. If you can't see the line very clearly, it's a little bit hazy, then it's opaque watercolors. But if you can see the line very clearly, it is translucent or transparent watercolors. That's what it means, that's what it says. So it's very interesting just to check if you want to use transparent or translucent watercolors. But like I say, it's not compulsory, is that the right word? It's not an option. Not, I don't know how you would say that. It's not, you don't have to do that. You can use whichever colors you want. So it's all up to you. Don't stress if you don't have the same colors as I do. You can always send me an email and say, Amanda, I have this and this and this color. Which colors is the best to use? You know, which colors can I maybe use to get closer to the colors that you use? And I will gladly answer you. Just give me a few hours. Obviously there might be a time difference, but I will definitely get back to you. I'll always answer all my students, and just use whatever you have. It's not I don't want you to stress if you don't have the same colors as I do. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to talk about this flower is these flowers in particular is I want to show you how I create my 3D or realistic flowers, for instance in watercolor. And it's not a photorealistic flower because that's not what I want, otherwise I can just take photos. So what I want to do is I want to paint them in watercolors, and I still want it to look like watercolors. I don't want it to look like a photo because then I can just take photos of my flowers and frame that. That's not what I want. We want to paint in watercolor, and we want to create something that look very realistic and 3D, sometimes a little bit loose. It depends on the time that I have or whatever. It all depends on that. But for this, the only reason just something for if you're a beginner, if you're an intermediate or advanced watercolor artist, which I don't have many of them on my channel because they can all basically paint. So for my beginner students, what I want to say is, if you want to push petals forward, so for instance you want your petals to stand out or certain parts of your flower to stand out, you will paint the certain petals much darker. Like I will paint this one dark, that one dark, that one very dark, that one very dark, that one dark, and those little parts in there very dark. This way you push all of these petals and the inside of these flowers forward. So you create a very realistic 3D flower, and I just wanted to mention that because it's something that you will see in the future when you paint. If you want something to stand out, like for instance the stamens, you will paint the inside of the flower much darker around the stamens. But we will talk a lot more about that in the future. And I've already uploaded the line drawing for you, so that is all uploaded for all my patrons. And then also the supplies list that I've uploaded. I've also I've also let me just find this because I used a piece of scrap paper. I also made you a lovely little color chart that you can use, which I will also upload for you. Just one thing, if you don't have all of these colors, you can use alizarin crimson. Then take a little bit of your Payne's Grey, but a drop, or your ultramarine, and mix it with a drop of alizarin crimson to get to these dark colors that I painted on the flower here. So don't stress if you don't have all the colors. Just try and get to the colors as close as possible. You don't have to have all the colors that I have here. If you don't have quinacridone red, you can use a very watery alizarin crimson. I will just add a drop perhaps of a yellow, but very, very diluted, just to get close to that color. So alizarin crimson is a color that you can use very often, and opera rose, quinacridone rose, you can use all of those colors that are very, very similar. You don't have to use Payne's Grey. You can get away with ultramarine to create your darker sections in your flower, so don't stress about it. You can mix yellow and blue to get a beautiful green. You don't have to use Payne's Grey. These are just options that I used for my students and my tutorial. So let's start, darlings.